Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cameras and Coffee. Today, for those interested, I am enjoying a very nice Guatemalan coffee from Calistoga Roasters in Calistoga, California. We were out there last month, and I brought a couple pounds back, and it's pretty good. What? Yes, that was the week you were in the kennel, pup. Yes, it was. Yes, it was playing with Pork Chop, your good buddy Pork Chop. Steinbeck has made a friend at the kennel. He's been there a handful of times this summer. And his good friend Pork Chop, and Pork Chop is just a regular at this kennel, and he and Pork Chop love each other. They just play all the time. I don't even know what kind of dog Pork Chop is. I don't think I've ever seen it, but apparently they are best friends. For today's video, 7Artisans. I think there seems to be some interest in 7Artisans lenses. And they just keep cranking out all of these lenses. So I've been looking into what is the structure of the Chinese lens industry, and it is very, very hard to figure out. It all seems to somehow revolve around this company called Pergear, P-E-R-G-E-A-R. And if you look on Pergear's website, they sell the lenses from a number of these different brands. So what I can't tell you is each of these different brands a different company as we would recognize it here in the West, with their own designs and their own manufacturing, or maybe shared manufacturing, that is then using Pergear as a distributor? Or is Pergear the company with all of these different brands that they're making, and that they're selling different lenses with different specs or quality or whatever with different brands? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. But as has always been the case with the Chinese photography market, it's very hard to penetrate into what is actually going on. This goes back to the 1960s with their TLRs. They were produced in China under names like Huazong, Pearl River, Five Goats, and like a dozen others. They were all functionally the same camera. They had the same, or some of them had slightly different construction. Some of them had slightly different optics or slightly different coatings or shutters, but fundamentally they all looked the same, and very, very many of them had the exact same optical systems and shutters with just different names. So and some of that had to do with the different names came from different factories that were in different regions. So if that's still the case, I don't know. Anyway, I may never have an answer to that. It's just one of those things that I'm looking into. So 7Artisans, and if you're wondering what a 7Artisans lens looks like, by the way, for images, I have two in my collection that I'm using to make all about round glass review videos. There's the 35mm f1.2, the first version of it, which I've used half dozen or 8 times now on different shoots, and I'm about a third of the way into the image capture for the round glass review. Those round glass review videos take about 100 sample photos, 100 to 120, depending on the lens, plus some video. I'm around 40 to 45 into the 35mm. Also, and so while I'm talking about this, of course, these sample photos you're seeing are from that 35mm. All right, so now the other one that I have is their 50mm f1.1, which I just got last week. It's available, I think, only Leica M mount. What do the images look like? I've used it once, and you're watching a video recorded on it right now because I have it mounted on the front of my A7S II. So right now it's so weird, the camera is so far away right now because I'm using the 50mm f1.1. Now, one thing and here are a few sample videos, or sample photos rather, taken with that on the one time that I've used it so far. I will say one really interesting thing about 7Artisans lenses is how amazingly bright they are. And this is true of other Chinese-made lenses. So, for instance, this video that you're watching right now, again, this Cameras and Coffee recorded on the 50mm f1.1. My normal settings for this series, I'll grab typically something like Canon FDN 35mm f2.8 or the Yashica 45 f1.7. I have a couple of other lenses I'll use from time to time. It is generally with the exact same lighting I have right now, 640 ISO, 1/30th of a second, and f5.6 to f8, give or take. I'm using f5.6 on the 7Artisans 50mm 1.1, 1/30th of a second for the shutter speed for the video, and it's at ISO 250. There is a 1 1/3 stop faster light boost with this lens compared to what I'm used to using, and that is absolutely staggering to me. I don't know if it has to do with the coatings or if there's something where they're taking a larger image circle and making it smaller. I haven't figured out exactly how they're doing it yet, and I might not, but I think it is absolutely fascinating how much more light apparently is reaching the sensor with the 7Artisans lenses versus others. And it's not just 7Artisans. I have a Cheecar, Cheecar brand, 35mm 1.2. I have multiples of those. It's like I must be working on a comparison video. Yes. At any rate, and that Cheecar is also super, super bright. And I was trying so hard. I wanted to get a waterfall shot with it the other day. Like, this would be really nice for that. I'll stop it down to f11, which is about the usable limit with that lens. And I'll set the camera to ISO 100, and we're in shade. And my shutter speed is 1/1200th of a second. What on earth? What on earth is this? It's mind-boggling. But the nice thing about that is in the shade. Like, I found we were out hiking with that same day, and I looked down off this cliff, and I'm like, oh, there's a 1940s car down there. So it was really easy just to take a few steps down this cliff and wrap my leg around a tree stump so I didn't fall off of it and get some photos of that car. Another part of that hike, I found an old trash dump when it looked like a mine had closed, and they just pushed another car down a hill, and then there were all of these old coffee and food cans from the 1980s. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to jump down into this trash dump and start taking photos of some of this stuff. So when I do that in the A6400 videos, those photos will almost certainly be in them because some of them were not bad. Any rate, that's not at all what we're here to talk about today. We are talking about 7Artisans, but we are talking about their 25mm f0.95 lens that is coming out for Fujifilm and I think a couple of other mounts, maybe Sony E and some others, an APS-C 25mm f0.95. Now, thinking in 35mm terms, that's 1.5%. That's around a 37-ish, 38mm. So call it, if you were to use it, if you were to have an equivalent full frame lens, it would be around a 35 to 40mm f0.95. That is exceedingly fast. It's a slightly wide lens, and a lot of very popular street photographers over the years have liked that 35mm focal length for street photography, and that would be a pretty good use, I'm going to guess, for this lens, not at f0.95. At any rate, so the lens is described as having 11 elements in 9 groups. 3 of them are made of high-end Hoya ultra-low dispersion glass. It's a bit, the Fuji Rumors article describes it as a bit heavy on the front of the X Pro 2 because it is 99.7 millimeters long, and how much does it weigh? Does it say in here? It doesn't indicate that I found how much it weighs. 52 millimeter front filter ring, and lens image quality is pretty good without a lens. Okay, great. So those are awesome and useful details. The Photo Rumors article is very interesting. They've taken the actual press release and have translated it. So it's a 25mm f0.95 APS-C large aperture wide angle lens, some other lenses. Okay, and it's going to be released in EZX, M43, EOS M, R and L mounts, and R and L will come later. They'll be available later in the evening. That's just a translation glitch. They'll come out sometime in the future. So it'll be available at the end of September with a price to be announced later. given the pricing of some of their other similar lenses, I'm going to ballpark this. This is going to be probably $299 to $349. That's going to be my guess. So they are touting the f/0.95 super large aperture as having beautiful blur. One thing that 7Artisans does very well with their lenses is they do have a very pleasing out of focus quality insofar as the lenses can deliver across the aperture range. They usually have something like 9 aperture blades, and they do a very good job of keeping a fairly rounded aperture opening across the entire range. So that's really well done. It's a very important attention to detail element that 7Artisans does consistently and well. Their lenses are also very well made. They have good handling. They feel very solid. So the two that I have are both exceptionally well-made lenses. I do have some complaints with both of them, some significant complaints, but at any rate. So they also note in here, in the press release, by the way, the breathing effect is small and the stepless aperture is better. So what they've done is they've also made the 25mm 0.95 suitable for using for video. So focus breathing, if you've seen any of my round glass reviews, is where if you focus at your closest focus and you've got an object right here, and then you zoom out to infinity, does that object get bigger or smaller? Does the magnification of that object change such that it has an apparent different size on your sensor? So lenses with good focus breathing, like next week's video, the IRIX 15mm f2.4, that lens has exceptional focus breathing. At closest focus and at furthest, an object at the closest focus point doesn't have any sort of significant magnification change. Whereas if you saw, for instance, the round glass review on the Yashica 45 f1.7, there's some significant focus breathing if you modify that lens to focus closer than it's designed to on the original rangefinder that I harvested it off of. So focus breathing is a very important consideration for people who shoot video. Also, a stepless aperture is very important as well, because if you have a manual stepless aperture when you're shooting video, you can control your aperture to control depth of field or lighting on the fly without the image shaking around on the sensor as the lens moves. Because if your lens moves when you do that, then you're going to have image shake. Or if your aperture stops down suddenly, you're going to have a noticeable change in exposure. It's going to get darker and then it's going to rebound and darker and rebound. So when you're shooting video with a manual focus, manual aperture lens, you want that stepless aperture so you can smoothly move through the whole range without affecting your image shake or your image exposure. So 7Artisans consistently is very mindful of their lens's ability to be used both for still imagery and for video. So they do some things really well and really right with that. Overall, am I super jazzed and excited about the lens? Not particularly. My take on speed is that as I have caught flack for in the past, and I will catch flack for again now and in the future, because I will probably stick with this view for a long time, speed is super overrated. Ultra-fast lenses like this, I'm going to stick to my guns on this, pretty much a fad, because it's a look, but it's cheaper to obtain that look just by buying a used medium format lens and using a medium format camera. But, well, not for video, in fairness. But at the same time, like, photography trends come and go, and speed is a trend that comes and goes. And if you follow Instagram or any of the photography trends, you'll see that these things come in waves and cycles, and I suspect that at some point people will get to a point where they have said, you know what, I have seen enough of these wide aperture images. They all kind of look the same. Super dark light loss around the perimeter, The subject can only be centrally placed because that is where the lens is sharpest. And if I'll tell you what, right now I'm going to give you a sneak preview of the 50mm f1.1 round glass review, which won't come out for a while. But here is a set of photos I took the other day of a tractor going across each of the marked apertures on this lens. And what you'll see as these scroll is that the lens is wide open from f1.1 until about f4. It's really acceptable in the center and completely unusable on the peripheries. That means that where this lens is designed to be used, it can only centrally frame subjects. That's incredibly limiting creatively. So if you want to centrally to do something that's not a central framing, then you've got to stop down to like f8 or f11. What's the point of having an f1.1 lens? Why not just buy something that's an f2.8 50mm? If you're not going to be living faster than f2.8, don't spend the money to buy something faster, right? Okay. If you can only centrally frame something from f1.1 up to about f4 or f5.6, what's the point of buying something that is that limiting to use creatively? That's why I think that these ultra-fast lenses are a fad, is because people who are really interested in having a good creative voice in their vision don't want to have that voice limited by the technical capabilities of their lenses, specifically where they are able to produce a usable and sharp image for the majority of the aperture range where that lens wants to be used. Right, Steinbeck? He's fine with the lenses as long as I just stop taking his photos. He does not like having his photos taken. He does not like looking at the cameras. At any rate, you know, I am really looking forward to doing the round glass review videos of the 35-1.2 from 7Artisans and this 50mm 1.1. They'll probably both be out sometime next year. The 35mm 1.2 sooner for certain. At any rate, they are interesting lenses, and I think there's a lot of really good engineering in them. I just happen to think that at some point people will realize I don't need to spend my money on this ultra-fast lens that can only do one thing when I could spend a whole lot less money on a slightly slower lens that can do that one thing and just a bunch more. So, at any rate, have a good day, everybody, and I will see you in the next Cameras and Coffee. What? Do you want to... You are not starved for attention. I know you like to tell me you are starved for attention. You like to tell me no one loves you. Everyone loves you. Everyone tries to pet you. Have a good day, everybody.